The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Earnestly Podcast. I'm your host, Ernest Christian, coming to you. Thursday, rather, on the line, of course. Our old friend. It's been a long time since we've spoken. I checked my Skype, it said 7 months ago, and I said, that's way too damn long. So David Ramil, the co-host of Lock on Heat Podcast. Dave, what's up?
Not much. It has been a long time, but a lot has happened since then.
A lot's happened in the Heat world, a lot's happened in the NBA world in general, and everything else in between. God, where are we going to start first? Because the thing is, I don't want to lock into the Heat stuff only because, I know that's primarily what you do podcasting on, and I want to do that to you. So we'll get into, first off, the Butler trade to Miami and all that. Your thoughts on that? Were you okay with it? Anything else?
I've been advocating Jimmy to Miami for a couple of years now, actually. Even when he was in Minnesota, before he had requested the trade, I was kind of in that locker room and sensing a little bit of that tension between him and Wiggins and him and Towns. And you start to hear the Minnesota beat guys say that they might not be as cohesive. And although they were able to, turn their talent and make it into a playoff berth, obviously, it wasn't going to work out there. Then when Miami was engaged with Butler and the Timberwolves to try and acquire him last offseason, It seemed like a perfect marriage. Didn't quite work out. But a year later, here we are. And I think it's a great fit for Miami. Like, you take away the on the floor stuff, you take that out of the equation, and Jimmy is a guy that is perfect for Miami's culture. Like, I think a lot of what we were hearing is that it was very appealing to him to see how Dwayne Wade was taken care of towards the end of his career by the franchise that drafted him. And I think he really saw that he was special, that he had the opportunity to kind of build something even more special here in South Florida than anywhere else. And I think that was great. But then just the culture of everybody working constantly. And that's obviously not something that you see throughout the NBA. Like, not every team relies on their work ethic as much as Miami does. And so that certainly appeals to a guy like Butler, who's had to work himself into the position he is. To have everything that he is, to be an Olympian, to be a gold medal winner, to be an all-star. All these things he's worked for because, he was a low draft choice. He wasn't supposed to get to this point. He was, not expected to make any noise at Marquette. And yet here he is now, one of the highest paid players in the league. And I think, he's built himself up to this point. On the floor, he's a playmaker. He creates for others. He's an underrated passer in my opinion. He's a great shooter. He's not a great shooter in the sense that he's not a knockdown 40%, from 3-point line, shooting, but he can get the shot off when he needs to. He can get to the line when he needs to. He can drive to the rim. All these things that we're missing, I think, from Miami's kind of under-talented core over the last couple of seasons, even with Dwayne back. I think Jimmy just makes his team significantly better, and I think he's such a great fit because, again, between the culture, between his adaptability, between the fact that he's willing to kind of take charge and say, no, you're not doing this right. Nobody on this roster was that person over the last couple of years. Even with Dwayne back, I think he kind of hijacked the season a little bit because of his retirement tour, and he certainly deserves it. You can argue that or not, but I think he deserves it. I think it kind of knocked the wind out of everybody's sails because clearly they were trying to go for a playoff push, but, Dwayne took so much attention and nobody could kind of establish themselves as the go-to player.
He serves as a great distraction for on the women's season otherwise.
Yeah. I absolutely. But I think, it was kind of hard in that locker room sometimes seeing like Dwayne being the star. Still, even at 37 years old, even playing limited minutes every game, still being the star, still being the guy that Spoelstra went to in the closing minutes of games. It's, for a guy like Josh Richardson, who was trying to be the star, for a guy like Justice, who believes he can be the star, even for a guy like Dion, there were so many things that were going on in that locker room. It never quite fit the way it should be. Now there's no more questions about it. Now Dwayne's gone, Jimmy's in, and he's going to tell you, get the hell out of my way. I'm going to take this shot. That's all there is to it. And I think that's kind of what you need in order to find success. You know where the ball is going to, and on great teams throughout the league, you know where the ball is going to in closing minutes. And I think now Miami finally has that.
Well, given where they were, and still kind of are now with the salary in the cap situation and whatnot, isn't that kind of shocking that they were able to pull this off like this? I mean, with Butler, I mean, I remember talking to many people, yourself included, about moving assets and how these assets are going to be hard to move, the Whitesides, the Dragic, and all the other assets. And yet, it didn't take really much. At least it seemed to me it didn't take much to get Jimmy Butler here.
It took a couple of seasons of patience, I think, and that was the whole thing. Like, I feel like I was one of the lone voices saying, it's okay. Maybe this group isn't great, but they're fun to watch. They're going to work hard.
I was there with you too. You and I both on the same page. I think we spoke last year or the beginning of the year that let's see where this goes.
Yeah,
it's going to fit it all anyway.
And the contracts, they weren't all that bad. They seemed maybe egregious when they were first signed because you were paying role players with 4-year deals, but it's kind of what it took in order to get those signed. And you wanted to, in Riley's opinion, he wanted to run it back after that 41-41 season. And I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, maybe it seemed a little, like I said, egregious, but for the most part, they were okay deals. They weren't all that expensive. There were other deals around the league, Timothy Mozgov and others that were getting paid a whole heck of a lot more. Those were really particularly bad deals. And so now you look at the landscape now, and now those contracts are finally coming to a point where they're expiring, Yeah. I thought Whiteside was the least movable contract on the books. Like, I would rather have James Johnson, as much crap as he's taken over the last couple of years, I would rather have James Johnson on his salary than Whiteside. I would rather have Dion Waiters at his salary than Whiteside. And somehow Riley was able to kind of surmise the NBA landscape, look at Portland and say, look, you're without Yusuf Nurkic for a while.
Yep.
You're going to need a center.
I hate to say it, but his injury helps Miami, really. I mean, to move that contract.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's questions about that too because they lost out on Enes Kanter, who wound up signing with Boston, obviously. Mm-hmm. Nurkic is going to come back probably at some point during the year.
Right.
He'll probably, he may not be at full strength, but either way, he's probably going to want to vie for some playing time. My question about Portland, and we could get into that later on if you want to save it, is,
sure.
People are looking at Whiteside as the savior of the franchise. Now, all of a sudden, Hassan's in the middle, along with Dame and CJ McCollum, and we're going to get to that next level. We're going to be a championship contender, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what the hell they were thinking because, they haven't seen Hassan over the last couple of years. I don't think that, one, it's going to be a seamless transition, and that, two, when Nurkic comes back, I don't think Whiteside is going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll happily go to the bench to allow Yusuf the opportunity to start again. And three, I don't know if his fit is as perfect as everybody is making it seem. Like, everybody thinks that Hassan is going to go in there, get triple doubles with blocks again, the way he did back in 2016, and all of a sudden be like a contributor towards a contending team. I don't see it. I think it's still going to be Dame and McCollum for the most part, and you're going to get occasional production from Whiteside. And I think that's just who he is at this point in his career.
Right. Now, the big story, of course, here. Really in the league also too, but involves the Heat also is the Russell Westbrook situation. Mm-hmm. Now he is reportedly welcome trade options going forward, as obviously they, Paul George moves to the Clippers. We'll get to that in a second and whatnot. But I've been listening to your podcast last week or so. You and Wes on Locked On Heat podcast, find on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcast catch you can find. And you guys are definitely not on the Westbrook bandwagon in terms of him coming to Miami. Explain to my listeners why exactly, because I think people are getting skewed as to your position. It has nothing to do with Russ as a player, but more so the things that he does or doesn't do.
It is somewhat about him as a player. I think if you look at Russ's statistics in a vacuum and without the way he got to that point, and you look at the fact that he's averaged a triple-double for 3 seasons, et cetera, that all sounds great. He's an MVP candidate. He's done everything that he's done. I just look at the way that he's acquired those statistics on a team that's kind of geared towards allowing him to do so. Like he first of all, he's not putting up a whole heck of a lot of points because, now he had taken a back seat to Paul George. And so he kind of demurred a little bit. One, the way he got to those points, he was a very inefficient shooter. He's got that pull-up jumper that's no longer falling at the rate it did earlier in his career. He's not a good shooter from 3. He still gets to the rim pretty easily because he's still somewhat athletic and explosive, but you wonder how long that's going to be the case. And I don't know that there's anything there to, like, I've seen a lot of people kind of make the comparison to Dwayne. Dwayne had incredible athletic explosion when he was earlier in his career, and then that kind of started to wane. And you look at what he was able to do during the Big Three era in order to adapt, and he became an excellent off-ball cutter. I think he became a very savvy player as far as his old man game was concerned. He always had that up fake to get to the line. I think he was just a lot more situationally aware than Westbrook has and ever will be. And so to me, I look at Westbrook's game and I don't know how it's going to age. I don't think it's going to age particularly well either. And then when you're looking at the fourth year of his deal where you're going to be paying him $47 million to potentially be a 35% shooter with declining athleticism, I don't know that that's the kind of move Miami wants to lock themselves into. And I know that people will also argue that, well, he's never had a good coach. Well, yeah, I think some of the crap that Scott Brooks has taken and that Billy Donovan have taken has been a little excessive. Yeah. I can say that there might not be as creative or imaginative as Eric Spoelstra, but I don't know that necessarily Spoelstra is going to plug into Westbrook and say, you know what, we're going to find a way to maximize what your talents you do have, and we're going to get you to be the most effective scorer possible.
And by the way,
that's realistic.
To your defense also on his argument, you have a say in this argument because you used to cover the Thunder.
I did for a couple seasons. And so I know that they're appealing. Like Westbrook's got some appeal to him because of that athletic explosion, because when he gets to the rim, because he's ferocious and he's so demonstrative and emotional. And you love to see that stuff. Like, I mean, from the Oklahoma City fan base, they loved and still love Westbrook. I mean, the fact that he chose to stay there after Kevin Durant left was a huge thing. I mean, a testament to loyalty and all this. And maybe those narratives are kind of overstating, but whatever. That's the reality. And I look at Westbrook and his statistics and his production, and I question how it's going to fit alongside Jimmy Butler. Like, you got a guy like Jimmy who needs the ball in his hand, who needs to have control over the offense to some degree, who's going to be the top player on this team and the undisputed leader in this group. And then all of a sudden you're going to have to cut that in half or cut that role in half because Westbrook comes into the play. And then what happens when they're both fighting for the ball at the end of the shot clock? Or, you know, how does it help Jimmy Butler to have a 30% career shooter from behind the arc here? Westbrook is not that guy. Westbrook needs to be surrounded by shooters, or else you see the offense stagnating to the degree that you do in Oklahoma City. I think their best player last year, inarguably, was Paul George. He was playing at an MVP level. So the success that everybody's pointing to is like, oh, well, he was successful last year. Yeah, well, Paul George is pretty damn good. And he was pretty good the year before that, too. And the year before that, the only year that we've really seen Westbrook on his own without Kevin Durant, he was the center of everything. He was perfectly healthy, and he was taking a lot of shots. He had incredible usage rate, and everybody was kind of just backing off and letting him do his thing so that he could get to the triple-double mark, and they did. I don't see his fit with Jimmy. I don't see his fit. Again, if you're going to be tearing up half the roster in order to acquire Westbrook, like, who are your shooters? I mean, God forbid you give up Tyler Hero.
I was going to say that. Tyler Hero, we're done.
I mean, if you give up Goran Dragic, that's another good shooter. Kelly Olynyk, that's another good shooter. I mean, those are the guys that we're talking about trading. You know, if you can somehow move James Johnson and Dion Waiters, who are not the greatest shooters, maybe I could understand that a little bit. At least you still have some shooters left on the roster. Otherwise, I'm just not sure that the two-man group between Jimmy and Russ are going to be, you know, effective, or are going to have the kind of potency that you would expect for two MVP-type candidates. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Let me get my position real quick on that whole Westbrook thing, okay? Everything you and Wes Goldberg are saying in your podcast that I listened all week long, I totally agree with you, 100%. All the things you said here too, you're saying. I totally agree with you. Here's the thing, though. Russell Westbrook, I tweeted this today on Twitter. Westbrook brings interesting to the Heat for the first time since LeBron left here. Let's be real, okay? Isn't interesting kind of a priority, too, for the Heat brass to look at? Like, you still want to sell tickets, and at the very least, Westbrook and Butler will sell you tickets at least in the next 2-3 years.
Yes, I get that. I don't know. Look, I think Jimmy's made them more relevant. I mean, I talked to somebody in Heat PR, and they don't give out statistics necessarily, but they said between Jimmy and Tyler Hero, they're doing really, really well in ticket sales and jersey sales. So both of those are already contributing immediately.
Interesting.
And that's funny considering Hero just signed a couple days ago. Yeah. Yeah, but he's already making an impact in terms of sales. People like his shooting ability, and they think he's made a contribution in that sense. I'm kind of willing to let this team figure itself out next season without jeopardizing their not long-term future, but their longer-term future, like next 3-4 seasons. If you tie yourself to Westbrook and that mammoth contract, that's it. You're pretty much out of the game. Like I don't think anybody ever expected to trade for Westbrook's contract, because this was never supposed to be the case in Oklahoma City. They were never supposed to have lost out on Paul George. They were just going to figure out a way to make that duo better, surround them with the kind of players they need to be better and more effective. And of course, it just never worked out that way. So,
we can agree though that the risk reward, the reason why there's so much more negative vibes towards the Westbrook move, if it does happen, is basically the contract, right? Like if he was getting paid, let's say $50 million less in year 4, would you be okay with it? Let's say he's making, the final year is making $27 million opposed to $47 million. Would you be okay with the move then?
A little bit better, but to me, my biggest thing is still fit. Like if you're telling me that this is Kevin Durant, who can play with anybody because his game is eternal and incredible. Like even if he's healthy, of course, that's another caveat. Of course. If you're telling me that this contract, $47 million for Kevin Durant and his incredible shooting and his ability to get to the line and do everything else that Kevin Durant does, I'd be like, well, sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what you got to pay in order to get Kevin freaking Durant. Not with Russell Westbrook. Like I just don't know what 34-year-old Russell Westbrook is going to do. He's already had 2 major knee surgeries. There are still lingering concerns, like his free throw shooting dropped, precipitously last year. There are concerns with his game and his ability to age. And we saw Dwayne having to take that maintenance, program a couple of years ago. And yes, eventually he was able to bounce back and play as many games as he did last year. But I mean, his game did not deteriorate perfectly. And even then, like I said before, he was better equipped for it. He was better to be an off-ball kind of guy. Westbrook has never been an off-ball kind of guy. That's the problem. It's like if Kevin Durant had the ball in his hands or if Paul George had the ball in his hands, Russ just kind of stares at him and just like, all right, go ahead, do what you got to do, get your shot off, and then I'll either swoop in for a rebound or I'll lazily jog back and pretend to play defense. I mean, I just don't see where the contribution is going to be. And to pay $47 million, that's a lot.
So that being said, is the proper move then, it was the rumors before Westbrook came in the picture, is the proper move for Miami to go after Bradley Beal and I say / John Wall, because I'm assuming that for Bradley Beal to even be wiggled away from Washington, they're going to want teams to take John Wall's contract as well too. Is that the better move for the Heat moving forward? Taking those two
I don't think so either. I think,
okay.
Yeah, no, I know acquiring Wall, there's too many questions. Look, he suffered a catastrophic injury. Who knows what kind of version we'll get back? To me, I'd rather wait, as always, and see. Look, I mean, I just said this. Nobody expected Russell Westbrook to be in the market. Hell, nobody expected Paul George to be on the market. He signed a contract, and the landscape of the league is changing. And now all of a sudden, a star player could request a trade. I mean, what if next year, for example, Dame Lillard gets frustrated and he wants out of Portland? Are you going to say, well, I can't because I've got Russ Westbrook on my roster now. I've got John Wall on my roster now.
So you believe that there's a possibility that even though the quote-unquote frenzy market or potential frenzy market is going to be dead for the next year or two at least, that there will still be some frustrated players that may pop out of nowhere and say, you know what, let me go. I'm ready to go. And then
Yes. I've said this for a while now, and I think that's always been, I was talking about Jimmy 2 years ago before he was, a free agent or anything to that extent.
That's true. You were on the show.
And so, I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't think it's going to be Giannis. I don't necessarily think it's going to be Dame, but it could be somebody else. And you know what? Victor Oladipo becomes a free agent in a couple of years. He's a perfect fit to kind of take over for Dwayne Wade. And he loves Miami. He trains in Miami. He has a house in Miami. All these things kind of make sense. So now all of a sudden you're seeing Dwayne Wade's lasting legacy, guys that he's played with, Jimmy, and a guy that he's mentored, and Oladipo potentially coming over here to take over the reins and carry this team over the next half decade. That's fine. And if that's all it takes is like a season or two of Jimmy and a good cast of characters, a re-signed Goran Dragic at the end of the season, a burgeoning Tyler Hero, a Justice Winslow and Bam Adebayo that can take another level, can take another step in their growth this season. I mean, I think it's worth waiting. I mean, you could potentially win close to 50 games this year in the East with just Jimmy. I don't see what the problem is. I don't see why you have to lock yourself into Westbrook. And to me, there are way too many concerns about his fit. I'm not sure why the Miami front office doesn't see those concerns. But we'll find out. I know they can't publicly speak about Westbrook and why he's so appealing. Maybe it is just like you said. Maybe it is a need to kind of put butts in seats and get some pizzazz back in South Florida. But if that's all it is, I mean, yeah, I'd rather wait for it, to be honest with you.
All right. There's one to NBA at large real quick. Scale 1 to 10, how shocked were you about Kawhi going to the Clippers and then the Paul George thing that happened 5 minutes later that was announced on last week Saturday? Scale 1 to 10, how shocked were you?
About Kawhi going to the Clippers, I'd say a 0. I kind of thought that that's where he was going. I did not think
even last week, even up to the hours and days prior to him deciding.
Yeah, I thought in my opinion, it was Clippers, Toronto, and Lakers last. Like I didn't see any kind of fit with the Lakers either for a guy like him. And that's the whole thing is like we're using the template that other players have created as far as like, oh, this is what I want. I want to work with 2 other stars and be the third guy and compete for this, that, and the other. Like Kawhi is definitely his own cat. He's his own individual, and we don't know really what goes on in there because he doesn't really show all that much publicly. And so we were kind of pigeonholing him into the same template, like I said, other superstars have created. But you know what? He just went and did his own thing. And then to kind of manipulate things so behind the scenes, like nobody saw the Paul George thing coming. And I think that was incredible. Like I could imagine him signing with the Clippers and maybe trying to lure Jimmy or somebody else or do something different, or maybe even just go to that roster with the players that were already there under contract. Instead, he just managed to finagle the Oklahoma City Thunder into giving up their superstar. And it was a great move, to be honest with you. I think the Clippers I'm not sure I'm ready to put them as the best team in the NBA or title favorites, but they're certainly up there.
Okay, so if not them, then who? Who do you think? This is a snapshot real quick.
Yeah, I mean, Los Angeles, you still have to give any team with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, I know that the surrounding cast is a little suspect, but if LeBron's fully healthy, and that's a big if.
That's the thing, though. The thing is, the reason why I think the Lakers are definitely in the top 3 favorites, of course, going into next year, but I think they have way more question marks on their roster, and that includes the LeBron and AD factor, the injuries and whatnot. Because now the AD thing being healthy, like we say that, obviously we always say that because that's the narrative you use about players if they're healthy, but AD can't stay healthy. That's the fact now. That's who he is as a player.
I think the last season was kind of an aberration in the sense that they kind of shut him down because of the whole trade talk and everything else, and I think the same thing with LeBron. Like I think he kind of shut himself down and was just like, nah, we're not going to do anything. There's no point. Let me just take a season off and rest and do whatever. And I think he's going to come back, and I think he's not going to play 82 games, but I think he'll get pretty close. I think both of them will be pretty healthy, and I think they'll carry the Lakers into a top 4 seed in the West, which is pretty significant, I think, considering where they've been in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In the Eastern Conference, I mean, look, Milwaukee retooled, and they look pretty good. I think they were the best team in the league last year. I think they're going to be pretty good this year. I have questions about what happens with Toronto minus Kawhi. But at the same time, like if they don't make any moves to clear up any roster spaces there or trade Kyle Lowry or anybody, I think they're a pretty good group. And Kawhi didn't play consistently during the regular season last year, so I think they're going to still win a substantial amount of games there. Philadelphia, I mean, with the acquisition of Josh Richardson and Al Horford and to re-sign Tobias Harris and another year of potential growth out of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, that's a pretty good group.
It's probably the best starting 5 in the conference, and I mean, you can argue the league altogether. Which by the way, they were last year too with Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, that's right.
So, in my opinion, anyway. Real quick on the Lakers as well, because I obviously lost on the Kawhi sweepstakes. Did you like how they used the remaining cap money, signed Danny Green and JaVale McGee and Rondo and all that? Did you like what they did with the remaining money?
Yes, I do. I think that's exactly what they should have. Like I think. I mean, I can understand the rationale behind trying to sign a third superstar, especially when, who knows what happens in Golden State. But I think that to kind of shore up, that you can't rely so much on an older LeBron James, although I think he can still be spectacular. And if Anthony Davis does have any injury concerns, it's always good to have a nice, accomplished group. I mean, Danny Green's won championships. Rajon Rondo has won a title. Those kinds of things matter. So I think last year, again, was an aberration. I think now we're going to see the version of this team that we should have seen all along. And I think you're going to see a much better group there. So I have faith in the Lakers' ability to mesh and kind of put it all together.
Right. Free agency has gone wild, and it's been amazing when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to the Brooklyn Nets is like not even like the biggest thing right now going.
I think a lot of the bloom is off that particular rose because KD's not going to play for a while.
Right.
Like if KD was going to come and make an immediate impact, pairing him with Kyrie and seeing how that duo, or I guess trio, if you include DeAndre Jordan, which I don't, I think it would be interesting to see how that would play out right away. But instead, you kind of like it kind of feels like it's a parallel move to what Kawhi did in the sense that like they just wanted to play together as friends and to enjoy the experience of playing in the biggest city in the world and all this and to kind of appreciate being Nets players and kind of helping transform this team into a contender. But I don't think anybody sees them, even if KD came back completely healthy, I don't know that they'd be seen as the best team in the East, and certainly not in the league. So it's kind of an interesting move in that they're not prioritizing a title as much. In Kyrie's case, he's won a ring. In KD's case, he's won a couple. Maybe it's not necessarily about. Maybe this is the shift in the narrative to something that Kobe and Michael before him created. The narrative about chasing the rings and doing whatever you can at all costs. Now we're going to see a league that's as even as it's been.
Oh my gosh, yes.
In decades. Like, I mean, I can't recall the last time it was this open.
I was saying, actually, sorry to cut you off. I was saying, I've been watching NBA basketball for over 30 years. This is the first time, honestly, I could say in 25 years, since 1993-94, when Jordan first retired, when Houston and New York met in the finals. That year, the first time I actually thought, I think this is like wide open as it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I mean, it seems like it's been a while that the Spurs are no longer the Spurs, so you're not going to count on them. And there's no clear juggernaut anymore. I mean, look, Clay comes back healthy, and that's a really good team, obviously with Steph and Draymond, and who knows what you get out of D'Angelo Russell or whatever you trade D'Angelo Russell for later this year.
I was going to ask you that too about D'Angelo Russell. Makes sense of that one. If they keep him, does it make sense to you to keep him?
They're not going to keep him. I think that's pretty clear. Like he's even said already that he understands that if they move him at some point, I think it was just it was a necessary move for them to kind of get some offense while Clay heals, add a little dynamic. You lost something, you have to kind of not rebuild but retool after you lose Kevin Durant, and kind of makes sense. Like I'm curious to see how that fit works out, but I think. I don't trust Russell necessarily, but I trust Steph and I trust Steve Kerr and the franchise to kind of find a way to figure it out. So, and if it's only an experiment that lasts a couple of months and you're able to acquire Robert Covington and who knows what else, it makes a lot of sense that way too.
You couldn't talk. I was trying to do that when that trade happened. Talk myself into a 3-guard rotation when Clay gets back of Clay, Russ, and Steph.
Yeah, I could see that. I think Clay's as good as a defender as you're going to get, so I think he can, assuming he comes back healthy and all. I think that's not a bad experiment, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. I mean, I did not see that happening on the landscape either. I don't think anybody did. I know most people expected maybe for him to kind of consider the Celtics or to go to the Knicks or maybe even to go to Phoenix and be their starting point guard there, but to see him in Golden State and in a Golden State team that's probably not a title contender, a true title contender, that's going to be pretty interesting. So we'll see how it plays out.
Right. Let's let you go. And I listed 10 teams. How many teams now with parity here being here apparently, we all agree parity is now arrived in the NBA, at least for 1 year. How many teams can you honestly see being legitimate title contenders right now, based on the rosters right now? Not everything's calmed down a little bit.
In the East, you've got at least 3 and maybe 4 if you count Toronto. Mm-hmm. I think you get Boston still pretty good. I think Philadelphia is still pretty good, and Milwaukee, obviously. And then in the West, I think you can make a case for obviously the 2 LA teams. Portland's probably a legitimate team. Denver, who we're totally overlooking, but they've made some incredible moves, and I think they're going to be really, really good. I know I'm probably I'm sorry,
Utah.
Houston. Yeah, Houston, Utah. Yeah, those are fantastic teams. I'm not sold on the Rockets. Another year of them running it back, and I'm not sure what's left in the tank. And
I'm not one to defend Houston real quick though, but if your worst thing you've done is lose to the Warriors 2 straight years, the team that's defined the last 5 years in this league, if they didn't lose to Utah or Portland, they lost to Golden State twice.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's the argument from Rockets fans is that, this is a team that was right there and maybe a few minutes away in Game 7 a couple seasons ago from being able to overtake them.
I'm not going to cast them away because I don't like them. And, they lost to Golden State. That's it.
Chris Paul, that concerns about his health are big. And how much longer can James Harden carry the load that he does? So, we heard about all these players being on the trade block. Do they come back and they're like, oh, yeah, thanks for wanting to trade us. Now we're going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to mesh perfectly well. I don't know. That could really cause some problems in that locker room, and I think that locker room was already problematic as it is.
I love Utah's roster, though. I love their roster.
Yeah, they look good. Losing Favors is bad. Yeah, look, I don't think the Pelicans are a legitimate title contender, right? But they're going to be a fun team to watch.
A lot of options to do with that roster. A lot of options. What
do you think of Zion Williamson? I haven't talked to you since he got drafted.
Oh, my thoughts on him?
Yes.
I think he'll be really good. I don't get too high and low about these guys anymore like I used to, the draft.
Yeah.
I try to keep it even keel. He has a good head on his shoulders, obviously, which is a great thing to start with, kind of like LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the one thing you want to look out for is the weight issues, obviously. Although I don't think that'll be a big issue. Although he's living in New Orleans, obviously. But I don't think that'll be as big an issue as people think it's going to be. I think it'll be really good. How great, we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of unfair. I personally am a little low on him in the sense that, I don't think, generational superstar that's going to be an all NBA player, for 7 or 8 seasons. That seems like the expectations for him. I don't buy that 100% yet.
I think the LeBron comparison, I'm like, okay, LeBron. I don't see the LeBron comparisons at all. No,
I don't either.
But he can still be a great player.
Yeah.
But I think the media, too, especially, is thirsty for the next guy.
Yeah, there's a big gap between LeBron James and Michael Olowokandi. You can be a really good number 1 overall pick without having to be a generational superstar that's probably the best player in NBA history.
Right, I agree with you. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I think Zion will be good. I think John Morant's going to be really good, too, in Memphis.
I'm not sold on him either.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's got to put on weight. I think the physicality is going to be an issue there. And it's one thing to dominate against inferior competition. I just don't know how that's going to pan out at the NBA level. It's going to take some time for him. And I think that New York pressure and then that roster being the way that it is, I don't mind the roster moves. They're plan, I don't know if it's plan B or plan G, but either way, I don't mind their roster. If you're expecting Barry to come in there at 19 years old and be your dominant star, you've got to have some patience because it's not going to pan out right away.
Not that I want to pick on the Knicks, but I want to pick on the Knicks real quick. What do they need to do now? They did everything correct the last year or so. They traded big pieces away, cleared all this cap room. I even dedicated a podcast in February saying that even though they're the worst team in the league, they look stable. Free agency, the front office looks stable, and yet they get nothing. They lose out on the number 1 draft. They lose out now on KD. They lose out on any other top free agent. What do you do?
I think you kind of stay the course and try to do the best you can. I feel like they're kind of listening too much. I think Dolan is a little too sensitive to everybody's criticisms. We know this for a fact. You can't criticize him in any way, whether it be a newspaper or a person or a fan or even an ex-player like Charles Oakley. You cannot criticize him without him reacting to it. It's somewhat presidential of him, if you know what I'm saying. And I think like that's a problem. Like you have to be able to understand that you are doing the right thing, and whether somebody criticizes you or not, maybe if they are criticizing you enough, it's because you're not doing the right thing, and you have to be able to adapt and change. Now it seems like they do, like you said, have stability. I don't mind the roster. It's not the best, but it could be fun. They could find some real good players there.
And they got Fizdale. It's great.
Yeah. You continue to develop internally. You hope that the players you added kind of mesh well. You kind of stay the course, don't do anything rash, and then these contracts come off the books in a year or two, and that's okay. And then you make another run. You show league-wide that you're stable, that you're not going to be rash and make terrible decisions. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, Phoenix is going to have that stench about them for a while because Robert Sarver is a terrible owner, and I think you're going to see the same thing in New York too. And I think, and I know this isn't an original thought on my part, but one of the things that's been defining Miami for so long is the stability of the front office and ownership, and the fact that it's very much a family, and that Mickey Harrison owns it, but Nick Harrison's a big part of what runs it. And that comes across to players. And I think they see that stability and they go, oh, it makes a lot of sense. This team is going to be stable. This is going to be able to provide the kind of things that I need to feel assured. Like, the average NBA career lasts 4.5 seasons. You don't want that to be in constant turmoil. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's what the problem with the Knicks is, that they're fighting that reputation of being so tumultuous and run so poorly that now you have to do everything you can to kind of sell the opposite of that.
In layman's terms, he needs to sell the team.
That would certainly help.
The thing is, they still sell out most of their games. They still bring in people to watch their games, even as bad as they are.
It's New York.
It's going to require fans stopping going to games.
Yeah, and they're not going to do that. And I don't know that that's necessarily. Yeah, I don't know that's necessarily what you want to do either. I don't know. I feel like they're going to figure it out. I think they're going to be an okay group. They're not going to win 40 games, but they're going to be fine. They're going to be fun to watch. So it should be interesting, and hopefully, look, he's not going to sell it because he's making so much money off that and the MSG network and everything else. So there's no need for him to kind of divest himself of any of that. But and I think he's also power hungry and he loves the attention.
I'm not a Knicks fan at all, but I don't want to be. I want to be at least competitive. I don't want to be terrible like this. This is bad.
Yeah,
it's bad. Anyway. Dave, thank you for the podcast, man. Plug your work, man. Plug what's going on. Anything plug? Articles? Anything new?
I've been. I think, as you know, it gets a little difficult sometimes when you have a young child in the house.
So really? Don't you know?
my writing has taken a step back. No pun intended. I'm contributing for Forbes now.
Oh, really?
I'll be writing. Yeah, I'll be writing for the Heat via Forbes, and I'm also still doing features for the Step Back on Fansided. So. Continue to look for my writing there, and if anything, just give me a follow at Ramil13.
And of course, Locked On Heat podcast. That's pretty much the main thing right now, right?
Yes, it is.
The main thing is what's the main thing, of course.
You got it,
Dave. Thanks for the podcast, man. Appreciate it.
Of course, always, man.
All right, brother. Take care. Thank you.